Okay, now for the next bit. Going along here, the enemy team has access to you on this super wide range, super wide area, and the only cover is these 4 boxes and that wall, which you won't ideally be able to use, or this wall here. So, how on earth do you suss this area out? I'm sort of leaning towards utilizing these high grounds here. So if we've got, say, it's honestly hard to say. I mean, the only people that would be up there without any risk would be the off-tank. But any off-tank with mobility basically means that if you have a diva, diva's going to be up here or here. This one in particular, it's probably a little bit better for something like a Junkrat or McCree, because he's got this space. He's got cover, you can jump down, health pack right here. And say you're fighting on payload around here, which is something that happens quite a bit. Not entirely sure why, it's probably just a respawn sort of thing. And in Plat, the team fight sort of dissolves into like a 3v4 and then a 3v3 and then a 3v2, and it doesn't really stop at a certain point, which is why it's Plat. Fighting around this point, I guess there's the particular bit that you have to be aware of high ground, but high ground is particularly hard to get to for the enemy team if they're on defense. You know, if they're on defense, the only characters capable of getting here would be vertically mobile characters, you know, Diva, Pharah, Genji, etc. So maybe being able to utilize that with your own off-tank or your own Diva. You know, if your team's fighting here, someone walks out underneath the cover and Diva's shooting down right on top of them. If they've got a Ryan Zarya comp, this would work quite well. Also, given that Defense Matrix shuts down virtually everything that a Ryan Zarya comp, it's ridiculous. Basically just gives your off-tank an opportunity to really hound them. Okay, so say you cap this first point. Oh, shield placement went a bit weird. Okay, so you're either dealing with crappy respawns from here, or you're dealing with people that have recently regrouped and they're playing from here, 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 sort of the popular spots. 1, 2, 3. At this point, I tend to like using bongos purely because you have this, which looks like a handrail, but it's actually an immovable immortal object.
Cease your resistance.
Ridiculously hard to shoot. And your team, up to about here, can use it. So how do you get through this sort of, it's like an elongated choke point, I would say. You know, say if you put your shield further along here and you're going along, this flank's still open, so how do you utilize that? Or how do you use against it? More than point. I think if I'm playing main tank for this part, it'll probably be quite a lot easier for me to go about strategy with whoever's going to be playing off tank, because that's going to be pretty crucial because there are quite a bit of high grounds here. And given the inclination that people have to stay on the ground at this level, being able to utilize that high ground would be pretty good. Just walking through here as Orisa is useless. Okay, so say payload's coming around, all that jazz. I'm leaning towards having shield on the right hand side, again, yet being able to push the payload, get people to stop contesting the payload, and at the same time you're limiting their sight lines of view. The only downside of that is that if you have recent respawns or something like that, they'll have to be either extra careful because of Widow or Hanzo, etc. If they're playing mobile characters, they'd be able to get across here and still have this to shield them. But here we are. Now we've made it to here, and the main issue that I have with this particular point is that no one ever utilizes high grounds on attack. Or if they do, then it's that team that absolutely smashes you, and that's sort of what we want to do. So, say if we're running main tank, at least for Orisa, this is particularly hard. Purely because you just have to be that payload bitch. While you do have the ability to hold people and use that as your damage combo to try and headshot people on their way down. This is particularly helpful against like a lot of the time I've seen Reapers do this. I've seen like McCree, I've seen Hanzo because Hanzo is broken, and all that sort of stuff utilize this. And it's not even like get a high ground anymore. This is almost like a flank, you know, while you're shooting someone here and all that sort of stuff. This is not even in your field of view. This might actually prove to be a lot better. So you get the payload to about here. The only way that they'll be able to contest it effectively and consistently is through this little bit here. Because say if there's a payload in the way, it's in between you, they can contest it and still have a shield. An immortal shield. Leaning towards thinking that utilizing this space is probably pretty damn good. Yes, it's open, apart from this small bit here. It's incredibly open, and if they peek through one small thing, if there's a Widow that looks through, you're sort of fucked. So, there's that to consider. Thinking obviously not just having everyone in these tram lanes here, because that's just not right. You'd want to have, I would think, partially spread out. Say if you've got your Orisa here, where I'm shooting, and then you've got a DPS here, an off tank there, something like that. Then you have a dynamic enough team comp that you can get support to whoever's getting aggroed, and at the same time you're able to set yourself up so that the flanks, i.e. one here and kind of one here, are shut down. And then once you get to here, because there is already this wall here, and it's a pretty fucking big wall, the shield isn't as necessary. Not saying that I don't need to use one, obviously, because people will be shooting at my face, which is very large. Say if we're almost at the payload and they start engaging us. They have this high ground, so preferably I want to be shielding somewhere like here. Because you've got this pillar that takes some of the damage away from you, depending on how well they aim, it's a smaller surface space for them to hit. So this shield here counters 1, 2, 3, like the main, and then these two flanks. Or these two sort of hidey holes, for lack of a better word. Could you do something with this space as a flanker? I don't know. We can figure that out later. Okay, so say you've just capped first point. As Orisa, this makes me anxious, because the sort of obvious thing to do, put your shield right here. Which is okay. It basically means, though, that this space is open, this space is open, that's open. Not that they'd really be ballsy enough to sort of find their way through here before you see them, but you're basically sort of at the whim of either the other team or what your team does and how they utilize this. So that's for the off tanks or the off tanks and the DPS to figure out. Zen and stuff would probably be back here. where they've still got cover and a close approach to team. So this is another natural choke point that I found, purely because people can peek from here, here, less so here. But these two spaces, and then there's this entire area that they have natural cover from. And coming from here, topographically speaking, they've got high ground, which makes it just that little bit harder. So, to counteract that, this is a fairly good shield position. Would this be better? That would be better! Bam! Look at that! Okay, so if you put your shield here, not only can you get this extra, I don't know what to call this, let's call this an overhang, for lack of a better word, this shield overhang. So to get there, this is also a really good place to put bongos. Ooh, that was zesty. You know, if you put bongos literally right here, they won't be able to shoot it. You can probably see that right here it cuts off, cuts into the ground, sorry, and they won't be able to shoot it because their line of sight only goes to about here. Okay, so say you're progressing up, my dog is whining in the background, and you've secured this high ground, you've secured main. Preferably, you'd like someone to have this secured as well, which is very possible. You know, this person can drop down inside, or you know, that sort of thing. And I think ideally what we would want to do at this point, so that we have this entire area secure, is to have main tank here and set on. That's the wrong placement. Have main tank here, so that you're shielding payload, shielding your squishies, etc. And then having probably like an off tank here, with ability to step back and get healed by Zen, and a DPS. I'd say probably no, that's open, and you want a DPS here because then they can retreat there. And then once you've got that, you've set up a crossfire, makes this area virtually untenable for them, and progressing forward, probably want to put a shield here. It's an aggressive position, and your Zen would probably have to go through the back cover, preferably escorted by someone. That's a good position. Okay. So from here, once you've got this zone, it's like a game of Risk, you know. This area is hard. Like this far area, which not that people use it a whole lot, but people obviously can use it if they have a strategy around utilizing this space, and then they can retreat through here or something like that. This is a good widow spot. So, given that, you'd want probably an off tank to swap from wherever they were previously at that last secured zone to around here. Because that way you can be close to your tank, close to your squishies, shoot here, and you can also shut down this little bit. Bam. Okay. My dog's still whining. Irritating. Okay. Moving through. People like to sort of shit on you from the flanks here. Because it's accessible, easy to do, and people that are confident enough don't particularly consider the consequences, which at Plat the consequences are that people will react 10 seconds later after it's already happened. So, letting the fucking dog out. Okay, so enemies like to use this little bit here, right? and sort of work in these halls. So one thing that would be a smart idea at this point would be swapping to a brig. Not sure if that'd be in place of a DPS player or flex tank. Probably not support. At this stage, okay, so say at this stage one of your team dies and one of their team dies. You are at a disadvantage, not them. Purely because your spawn is far, far away, and their spawn is, you know, at that light over there. So they have the spawn advantage by far. And this is sort of the stage where you would much prefer to out-sustain them than try and kill them all one by one. You sort of want to get like that steam, like you just want to get that momentum. And so I'm thinking that here probably have your Orisa setting up shield on the payload, you know, on the little skirting of the payload. And that way you get the overhang just like on this little bit before. And it also provides a good place for you to put bongos, because at this point you will probably have another, because brawls tend to last quite long around here. So, moving along, blah blah blah. I think the idea at this point is to progress forward, take aggro from the idiots that are brute forcing you from the front, and try and shut down these flanks here. Like, the idea is to have sort of possession of the space in the center, and this is where you're fighting them head on. Like, this is the dividing line right here. So you've got, you know, your blue team, your red team. And the aim is to have blue team secure this space here. Because you've got a mini, you want to be able to use that as part of your sustain. And then there's also this bit, which people love to sort of, you know, walk around the side of the fight. Say if they're playing Brig, and then, you know, do the shield bash combo on a Zen, and then they're fucked. So, leaning towards more so favoring this side to protect, which means that you would want to set up shield on the right side of the payload. You keep going, blah 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 blah. The issues that you have to look out for are Reinhardt, Brigida, and Moira if she has Coalescence. Because they've got flail and cleave damage, and that goes through shields. So if you put bongos here, they're just going to whack, 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 and then it's going to be fucked, and you're not going to get value out of it. In terms of the actual damage that produces, that's really good for everyone on your main line, in like that main channel. And also, not that they're going to have a shield here, but, well, not necessarily. It could be a Zarya or a Roadhog or whatever, but anyway. They'll be able to more easily secure this place. And that's sort of what we want to do. We want to oppress the flanks on this side, and we just want to sort of make them, I'm doing hand gestures and it's not working because I'm recording video. And you want to sort of push this. You want to be able to push it forward and have these flanks secured. If you have the sides uncontested or less contested, then, you know, this little space, if there's like an enemy, whatever, they won't be able to contest payload from here, you know, because your team has this and you'll be able to shut them down. Given that there's a health pack, that's obviously more biased towards our team winning it in terms of spatially. And here you have a bit of an awkward spot. If you're playing main tank, Orisa is going to be harder. I'm just sort of thinking you won't be able to set up shop here and then have someone else moving the cart. Does that shield really give you much in the way of value? sort of, yeah, not too crash hot on it. Purely because you're going to have as many people as possible from their team, the enemy team, trying to contest the payload, because people swarm, and that's just sort of what happens, at least at this level. Whereas you kind of want to have your rigid setup, you know, you want to have like squishy, tank, you know, your freaking jungler, crossfire, all that sort of stuff. But the point of having such a rigid sort of positioning strategy for your team is because, say if you've got, payload's going to be here, so if you've got your Orisa here and someone is trying to be a dickhead to whoever's here, you can zoop and then you can focus them. Also playing Orisa, having a large green orb is particularly helpful. So, you know, I guess a call out for this could be left side orb, and then people can or if you know, right side orb, bang. This is, yeah, that's good. Okay.